Radio Anthropocène. À l'écoute du changement global.
Good afternoon, everyone. You are listening to the live stream from the terrace of La Croisière in Arles, one of the places at the very heart of the International Festival of Photography, Les Rencontres d'Arles. And we are very lucky now to receive Debi Cornwall, American photographer whose exhibition called Model Citizens can be seen at Espace Monoprix during the whole summer and until the end of the festival. Good afternoon, Debi Cornwall. Welcome to Radio Anthropocene.
Thank you, Jindra. It's a thrill to be here in the middle of a hopping croisière.
Oh, thank you very much. So, I would like to start our conversation by the beginning. When we enter your exhibition, the very first image we can see is an American flag. A photography called The Flag Rising. We can see a giant American flag with a man supporting or maybe rising the flag with a head and his arms touching the fabric. He is almost enveloped in this flag, which is one of the greatest symbols in America and maybe the most recognizable symbol in the world. And I was wondering if it's a coincidence. You are American, you are coming to France, and the first image in your exhibition is an American flag.
Yes.
So could you please tell us something about it?
Well, there's a lot of American flag iconography in the exhibition, Model Citizens, and it's a challenge to take on such an over-determined sign as the flag. But in the image where you walk in, the first image that confronts you is this man almost doing battle with this epically sized flag. You know, the title is Flag Raising. You don't know if it's going up or coming down, but he is getting his whole body into it. And I'm setting a mood with that wallpaper-sized image.
You talk about your work, saying that you are investigating the fictions fueling America's identity of itself.
Exactly. Yes, the performative fictions that we resort to make sense of life in a violent country whose people no longer agree on what is true. There's a quote in the Leif Friedlander exhibition on the ground floor of Luma here in Arles that says when he was in the heyday of his work in the 1950s and 60s, Leif Friedlander found Hollywood, and he found an America starved for fictions and myth and drama. And I think where I'm coming in a couple of generations later, at a very different moment when we have gorged ourselves on the fictions, they are now fueling us. We have metabolized them, and they have become a very part of our self-concept. And that's part of what I'm looking at in the project.
I learned also that you worked for a quite long time, for 12 years, I think, as a civil rights lawyer.
Yes.
And is there a link between this first part of your career and this second part as a photographer?
Well, when I left my career as a civil rights attorney, I imagined that would be behind me. But it turns out you bring your lived experience with you, even when you make radical changes in how you are living and how you are looking at the world. So I'm drawn to similar kinds of questions, to social critique, systemic critique. As I was as an attorney, I had represented innocent DNA exonerees in lawsuits. So innocent men who'd spent years in prison for crimes they had not committed, who'd been proven innocent and released. And then I and my colleagues would attempt to use civil rights lawsuits to figure out what had gone wrong in the criminal justice system. So that training in thinking systemically, finding evidence to use in support of a systemic critique has certainly stayed with me, as have the skills in interviewing, in research and negotiation. So it has completely, the experience of lawyering and the skills of that profession have completely transformed the way I think about making visual work and what images can accomplish.
But the link also with the subjects like the power, the exercise of power, the evidence, the justice,
Exactly. Yeah. I think one shift that I have experienced since I started making visual work 10 years ago only was I was coming in still very focused on critiquing state power, how state power operates on us, how it is performed, the fictions it tells us as the people. And as model citizens evolved, I shifted my focus into civil society and to us, to the people, and how we consume those narratives, those fictions, how we metabolize them, how we enact them ourselves. And though there is American flag iconography, though it is about American identity, I think it's important to put that work in context. The pictures are made across the United States, but I think anyone who visits the show, and I'm hearing this from people in the space who've navigated it, who come to me and want to talk about what's coming up for them, whether they are from France or Germany or Luxembourg or England, and they all recognize the dynamic that I'm putting my finger on.
So 10 years ago, you stopped your career as a lawyer and you decided to take pictures, to become photographer, and you decided to go to Guantanamo. How did you end up going to Guantanamo, taking pictures?
Well, when I had the first idea about making pictures on the topic of Guantanamo, I had no interest in going there. I thought it's a heavily controlled site. It's very difficult to figure out whom to ask for permission. When you get there, you're incredibly limited. When I first went in 2014, all I knew of Guantanamo visually was orange jumpsuits and barbed wire and American military in their fatigues. What's the point of going and making that picture that we've seen 10,000 times, that we've stopped looking at, we've stopped seeing, we've stopped thinking critically about what's happening there? My initial idea had been to photograph the men cleared and released from Guantanamo after being held for years without charge and without trial, either going home or being sent to third countries where they may not even speak the language. I felt from my work as an attorney within the United States, working with exonerees, men who'd been in prison and then were dumped back into the world, that I had a sense of what the Gitmo survivors were going through. Exponentially more complicated for men who'd been in Guantanamo. They don't have a certificate of innocence. They don't have testing from scientific evidence that says you didn't do this. Just for having been held in Guantanamo, they're on some level always suspect. But I felt like I could understand and could relate to them. But my initial attempts to connect with those men were a complete failure, which made perfect sense.
Failure in terms of communication with people who had been innocented?
Well, the men who had been held in Guantanamo and released did not respond to my initial inquiries.
Okay.
And then I realized, well, of course, why open your life to an American lawyer who likes to take pictures? Because at that point I had nothing to show. There was no reason why they should trust me, trust that I could amplify their stories or their experience. I hadn't established my credibility as an artist yet. So just for lack of any other movement with the idea, I said, well, why not figure out how to get to Guantanamo and put in a proposal and see. And I did that. And 9 months and a background check later, miraculously, I was allowed to go.
And it seems to me like maybe one of the strangest places on Earth. Is it?
It is bizarre. It was Disneyland meets Cuba meets maximum security prison.
Why Disneyland?
Well, it's a very American place. So Guantanamo Bay, as we're referring to it, is really the United States Naval Station in Guantanamo Bay. It's on Cuba. It's 45 square miles crossing Guantanamo Bay itself, where a naval station is that is operating like any other American naval station. And what they do in military bases around the world is they construct it the same. So it's familiar to soldiers. There are McDonald's. There are bowling alleys. The architecture is familiar. So it's very American. That's what I mean by Disneyland.
Okay.
Right. Well, also I found there was a gift shop. Which is the Disney sort of quality, which I found unremarkable on my first visit. Because, of course, we have gift shops everywhere. And it was only when I started talking to others about my experience that they said, wait a minute, hold up. There's a gift shop. And so I bought everything.
But it's only for military.
It's only for people with freedom of movement.
Yes.
You know,
but any American can go to Guantanamo? No.
No, you must go through the military authorities who control access. You must prove you have a good reason to go. And at this point now today, my understanding is press are no longer allowed to do even the controlled visits that I undertook 10 years ago. So that was a window of opportunity.
Okay, I think that the naval bases and the prison is still used now.
Yes.
It has never been closed.
It has never been
closed. By your president.
By our past president, Obama. He promised, but for reasons that are probably too technical to get into in this conversation, he decided not to take executive action to close it down. There are laws saying that the men held there may never set foot on American soil. So even the men who've never been charged, even the men who've been actively cleared, have nowhere to go. So that's a political question. It's a question of political will. It's a question of negotiating with other countries, what terms they're willing to accept to host someone who's been held in Guantanamo and suspected for so long.
Well, let's move now to other locations you worked at, like the training centers for military and border patrol.
Yes.
Different places, maybe some dozens of those places around United States.
Yes.
And how did you do that move from Guantanamo Bay to training centers?
It made perfect sense in my head, but I guess I probably need to spell it out. It was really informed by my experience at Guantanamo Bay. On one hand, when I arrived, and this completely transformed how I looked at Guantanamo, I was told by the first of many military escorts, Gitmo is the best posting a soldier could have. There's so much fun to be had here. And I thought, I haven't seen that. That will get eyes on Guantanamo.
You said so much fun to be here.
So much fun. Look how comfortable we make our guests. So navigating and visualizing those official state fictions was transformative to my thinking and my visualizing of the space. So it got me thinking about state-created realities. On the other hand, during my 3 visits to Guantanamo Bay, I was always accompanied by military escorts. And what do you do when you're spending 12 hours a day with someone you don't know? You try to get to know them. You ask about their lives and their experiences. And what I heard was all of them had served abroad in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and none of them was sleeping through the night.
Yes.
So it got me really thinking about how does one wrap one's head around the sobering reality of going to war. So that led me to military training sites.
Yes, but if I understand it well, people that served abroad in real wars then became actors, like role players in simulations.
This is what I found.
So they are doing all the same thing once again and again in other conditions. Of course, they cannot be hurt or killed in a simulation.
I found a network across the United States of a country called Atropia. It's a fictional country.
It's an official name? Atropia?
It's capital A, Atropia. And it plays out on mock Afghan and Iraqi villages constructed on military bases. I visited 10 around the country multiple times. And they have the architecture to make it look as though we are abroad. And they are populated, these spaces, by civilians, cultural role players, refugees or naturalized American citizens who've chosen to come to the United States only to turn around and put on costumes and enact versions of their past selves in the service of the United States military under the conditions, the simulated conditions of war. And it's a very particular kind of simulation. The war games end whenever a live bullet is found.
It happens?
Yes. While I was there, everything ground to a halt because you don't want to hurt anybody. And that's the whole idea of the training the idea is to replicate the circumstances of war, the sights and the sounds and even the smells for American soldiers who've grown up in the cornfields and have never heard Arabic and have no idea what it might feel like, so that when they do get overseas, they will have a sense memory. They won't have to remember training. They will have lived it without the life or death stakes of real war. That's the thinking.
So now we moved from your first project in Guantanamo Bay.
Welcome to Camp America.
To your other newer projects called Necessary Fictions.
Yes.
You can see all those pictures from some of those pictures from the second project in the exhibition in Monoprix, Espace Monoprix here in Arles.
Yes, from the book, the 2020 book with Radius Books, Necessary Fictions, yes.
So there you have locations that serve the simulation for military, but also border patrol.
Yes. So I completed my tour.
It's also a necessary fiction?
It is not. No, so I completed the kind of examination of the military simulations, and it got me thinking about what are the stakes of infusing fictions and fantasies into our daily lives outside of military bases, because I found that in my research and in my lived experience, increasingly as civilians, fictions are seeping into our media, our lives in various ways, and that got me thinking. So with the incredibly generous support of the Swiss Prix Élysée, for which I was shortlisted in 2022 and won in 2023, I was given 2 years to make and complete
Just a small reminder, the Prix Élysée is a very prestigious prize, award, but it's not linked to Palais de l'Élysée, French presidency. There is no link between.
No, it is sponsored by Parmigiani Fleurier, the watch company in Switzerland, and administered through Photo Élysée in Lausanne, Switzerland. Very
in France it could be a little bit confusing because Élysée for anyone it could be a.
Very important clarification. This is a non-denominational, apolitical award, and I had applied with just the germ of an idea, just the seed, and I said I'd like to photograph and investigate how staging, performance, and role play have come to inform thinking about citizenship in a violent land whose people no longer agree on what is true. And I thought of 3 different kinds of venues that I'd like to photograph. And it made sense to me, and I wasn't convinced that it would be coherent to anyone else in the proposal, but apparently it was. And
yes, it is. It is
right?
Because all your subjects constitute, I think, a point of view on what we call, maybe we could call it post-truth world. So where all the boundaries between fiction and reality are blurred every day by media, by communication technologies, and by special exercise of power. Because let's think about the 9/11 attacks, then the second Iraq War, Then WikiLeaks, when Julian Assange revealed American war crimes, in fact. Then 2013, Edward Snowden, who revealed the massive surveillance of all world communications by NSA.
Yes.
Then 2017, Donald Trump elected, and 2021, the assault on Capitol.
Yes.
So all those events, I think that a lot of people in the world were thinking, well, this cannot be true. And
how can this be happening?
It echoes some kind of feeling of unreality of our world.
Yes.
Something that is deeply wrong, something that doesn't function anymore.
Yes, I think we're all feeling that, a sense of being destabilized. And in the exhibition at Espace Monoprix, we're sort of leaning into that with the entry and the first phrase, if you will, several walls, are meant to give you an embodied feeling of that disorientation. Where are we? What is happening? Is this real? What do these things have to do with each other? And the idea is to invite a state of critical looking, to really look incredibly closely at what is in the frame. What are you being shown? To what end? What is being performed? And to what end? And it's also mirrored in the book, which we could speak about now or later.
Of course.
I think this destabilization, this disorientation that you've put your finger on, that I'm looking at and exploring in the work, is mirroring a shift in our relationship to photography and documentary photography in particular. There is this persistent sense of the photographic document, of photograph as proof. And I think with AI, artificial intelligence, there's sort of the final nail in that coffin, if you will. We should always have been looking critically at the choice of what to frame and what to leave out of the frame, the context in which the photographer was working and making, etc. But now we can't trust that the photograph reflects anything that ever was. And so in the book, Citoyenne Modèle with Édition Textuelle in French.
The French edition just published right now.
Just
so
now.
Please go buy the book. It must be in all the local stores. Everywhere here in Arles.
It is. And at Arles is one of the only places in Europe where you can also find the English edition if you are Anglophone, with Radius Books, who has published all three of my trilogy of books on the post-September 11th American condition. So we use design to emphasize that sense of slippage. And you'll see pictures sliding around the pages. That there are what we call French folds. You probably have a different name from the
French folds
here in France, where the pages are not cut apart.
Yeah.
The folds of the large pieces of paper that are made.
I'm sorry, I don't know the exact.
Some might call it Japanese folds. You'll see, if you have an opportunity to see the book, photographs are slipping up, they're slipping down, they're slipping over page folds. And it's just this subtle layout and design element adding to the sense that nothing is stable. Not our
so
reality.
Every picture can disappear, can get lost. And,
we need to pay close attention.
And so you published 3 books.
Yes.
If I'm right.
Yes.
Model Citizen, Necessary Fictions, Will Come to Camp America. And I think that you choose very special design.
Yes.
It's not a coincidence. It's on purpose.
Absolutely. I feel very strongly that you want to take advantage of the form. And each form for showing visual work has different strengths. Right, so the book form has a beginning and a middle and an end. It has a 3-dimensional quality to it. It has a tactile quality. It has a weight. All of those elements can be harnessed to further the concepts you're dealing with in the book.
But you also have, for instance, letters inside or something like some written texts.
In different books, there are different.
It's much more than a.
It's not just pictures.
Book. Yeah.
It's never only pictures for me. For me, the book form invites text, it invites archive, it invites personal reflection, and I weave the text and the archival material and my photographs together in ways that feel right to me to create a frame for the viewer in book form. It's sort of ironic because I'm a flipper. When I go to the photo book stores, I will pick up a book that looks interesting to me. I will turn to the back and I'll flip forward. If you do that with my work, you're probably not gonna get it and may not like it, and that's fine. It's the nature of visual work. It's not for everyone. My work really rewards close attention.
Thank you very much, Debi.
Thank you
so much. Very much. So you are all invited, of course, to visit the exhibition at Espace Monoprix and to buy a book, Model Citizen. You will find photos of Model Citizen series, but also, I think, photos of Necessary Fictions,
exactly.
the previous series.
Yes, and for anyone here live, who'd like to attend the tour that I'm giving for the public, Friday at 10:15 in the morning on the second floor of Espace Monoprix. I look forward to talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Radio Anthropocène. À l'écoute du changement global.